our business and product supply chains, and suppliers are a huge part of that. So I can't thank you guys enough. And we'll talk a little bit later about what does that mean to be a Giga Guru. It means a lot. I'm so excited to get us started this morning with a couple of fantastic leaders of our company and also of sustainability. They really don't need introduction. Doug McMillan and Dan Bartlett. So welcome to the stage, guys.
Good morning.
Morning, everybody. I'll just lay down over here.
Thought you're trying to get far away from me or something. I wouldn't blame you. Welcome, everybody. As we get into today's agenda, we felt like it'd be important before we talk about some of the contemporary topics and priorities that we kind of take a step back, because sometimes you have to go back to the origins of this journey we've been on sustainability to understand what we've gone through and how we got to where we are today, because it really was a different company back then when we think about the journey we've been on that goes well beyond the 11 years I've been at the company. And so, Doug, maybe it's important for you to start by saying, you know, when you take us back to the early 2000s, and the company was in a different place at that time, growing like crazy, but also there was a shift in attitudes towards the company, and it required us internally to make a mindset shift ourselves. Can you take us back into those periods and what it felt like?
Yeah, sure.
As we gone into this period of our journey?
This is the old guy part of the session.
Yeah, this is
Good morning, everybody, and thanks for being here. I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces. I was just saying to Dan that Mike McFadden's here today. Where is Mike? Hey, Mike. When I moved into the home office from a store in January of 1991, and they gave me a part of fishing tackle to manage, and I reported to Mike. And I haven't seen him in a while, so it's great to see him. So he should probably tell some of this story. And Bobby Martin's over here. Bobby, would you raise your hand and say hi? And Bobby had a lot of big jobs in the company, led technology, and then led the international segment for a while, taught us a lot about what global expansion looks like. He lived through this story too. So there are some people around here that can tell you whether I've got this right or not, because I'm going to tell you my perspective on it. But, you know, we were growing the company, you know, starting with Sam Walton and getting into the discount store business in 1962, led us to this point where he got excited and the other leaders of the company got excited about supercenters, and we started opening a lot of supercenters. And once that formula worked, and it worked really well, we got really aggressive and we started taking a lot of food market share. And there were people that didn't like that, our competition, other stakeholders that didn't like it, and we were winning a lot. There have been years and years of growth. And you know how it is when you start out cheering for Steph Curry or Patrick Mahomes, and then they win a lot, and then you kind of wish somebody else would win. That happened with Walmart. People are kind of ready for somebody else to win, and so this societal pressure starts emerging, and we start being attacked, criticized for all kinds of things, sprawl, harming mom and pop retailers, not paying our associates well, a number of things, and we didn't understand what's happening at first. We were not very sophisticated with respect to reputation management. We didn't know that some of it was professionally done. And for years, we just were taking hits. And our first response was to ignore that, because we'd been taught to ignore the media because the media had been saying good things. So that happened for a while. And then the second step was to fight back with facts. That didn't work. We missed the news cycle. Nobody really wanted to write the good news story. The damage already been done. We did that for a while. And then there was this moment that you alluded to, which was a mindset shift, where Lee Scott, our CEO, said, this isn't working. How about we do something different? And let's just get quiet for a while and go listen to the critics. Let's go find the people that think they dislike us, and let's learn from them. And if they have a good thought, something that we should be doing as a company, let's do it. So we're going to go through a period of time here, might be years, where we stop worrying about telling our story and we just focus on becoming a better company. And that was a really important moment in the company's history.
It's interesting when you study kind of corporate history, how often history repeats itself with companies that are founder-led and grow and scale fast. The focus always is on the brand proposition and usually your associate employee proposition, and you're taught and trained to just to ignore everything else. But as you grow and scale, expectations grow with them, and that inflection point is one in which different companies either get forced into that point or they find it on their own. More times than not, they get forced into that point.
Yeah, we deal with startups all the time, and you can see it. They're maniacally focused on a use case. They're maniacally focused on users, customers, maybe their own employees, but they're not thinking broadly about their business. It's part of a maturity cycle, just like a human goes through. People grow into being an adult. I think companies go through the same process, to your point, on different timelines for different reasons.
So that then gets us to August, the summer of 2005. You and I were in very different places. You just became CEO of Sam's Club, if I recall.
And where were you?
I was in the White House when Katrina hit. And this is a tale of two different halves of the coin, because this was a memorable moment, a seminal moment for Walmart. And when I got onboarded here, and everybody kept talking about how, well, the government was falling on its face, Walmart had to step in. I was kind of like, can we ease on the criticism part of that? It was a rough time for me there. Still have PTSD from that, but
you guys didn't do as bad as we said you did, I guess, if that makes you feel better.
All these years later, thank you, Doug. There's a lesson in there, but that's a different venue, a different time. But for us, for Walmart, it was a seminal moment, and it's one of these, that mind shift. Sometimes you can kind of talk about it, but when events happen like that, and it provides an opportunity, and really was an opportunity for the world to see Walmart's humanity in its heart. What was it like for you? Like I said, you're a you had leadership roles, but this is the first time you've been a segment CEO. And days later, literally weeks later, this happens on the 25th. Take us through kind of your own personal journey in that, and then the journey that Lee Scott led the company in, and what that response was like.
So my memory of it was Labor Day weekend. We were on a call. I think it might have been the Saturday of Labor Day weekend, and you could see on the news what was happening in New Orleans, the flooding, people on rooftops, all the problems that were happening. And Lee interrupted the kind of standard EOC conversation, which we've been having this week related to Helene in North Carolina, and same kind of moment. And Lee's interruption is to say, this is really bad. This circumstance in New Orleans and in Mississippi is worse than what we normally deal with, and it requires an overreaction. And so I just want to unleash all of you. Send people, send money, send merchandise and supplies, go big. And don't worry about how much it costs. And if we miss the quarter, we miss the quarter, and we'll just tell everybody why. So we did. We sent people from all over the country. I was, as Dan said, at Sam's, and we had people, Marvin from Ohio and all over the country, taking teams to sleep in the steel inside of Sam's Club to help other people. We had people administering CPR. We had people, Mike Turner was helping land helicopters on Sam's Club parking lots from the military. It was amazing. And after a few days, when the country saw Walmart stepping up that way, they said good things about the company. And it felt so good because it had been so long since we had had that kind of feedback, and that pride came back. And Lee sees that moment, looked at all of us and said, did you like that? We said, yeah. And then he said, well, what would it take to be that company every day and have you feel that way every day? And he connected the dots back to the years of learning, which was, I don't know how long, Jib, it was, but more than a year. Jib Ellison gets introduced to us, and he starts teaching us about sustainability and making us read books about science. And I made 2 C's in college, and one of them was in botany, and he was making me read books about plants. The Natural Step, Green to Gold, Ecology of Commerce by Paul Hawken. Paul gets involved, Rick Ridgway gets involved, and people that, didn't like us or didn't think they did at the time, Amory Lovins and all kinds of characters, influenced our plans and got our mind around what the company.
You still got to share that. This was how naive Doug was about sustainability, because Lee, if I recall correctly, asked you to come over, the segment leaders come over to have a sustainability meeting, and he thought it was how the P&L was sustainable. So he brought all of the. You tell.
Thanks for bringing that up. That's true. Jib talks about the first meeting, and you may have heard him talk about it, but there was a meeting before the first meeting, which was just with basically the EC, because I thought we were going to talk about financial sustainability. And then Lee started talking about plants. And I'm like, what is happening to this company? we got over that. But anyway, after Katrina, Lee seized the moment and said, all this learning we've been doing, like we'd walked landfills. We'd had all these experiences. We'd started to see the whole system, started to think about more stakeholders than just customers and associates. He said, let's apply the company in a way that does societal good. And he and Jib and Paul Hawken and some other people wrote the Leadership in the 21st Century speech, which Lee gave in 2005 in October in this room. So next year we'll be celebrating 20 years as it relates to that speech, and we need to find a way to celebrate that appropriately. But it really, it catalyzed us, it changed our mindset forever, and it set us on this path of sustainability with these big goals: renewable energy, selling sustainable products, eliminating and selling, having sustainable packaging, eliminating waste, things that we've been working on forever since then. And I'm so proud of that moment in time and that mindset shift. And my hope is that we can find a way to rejuvenate even more. Now we've kind of mechanized it to a degree, and I would like to see us have another surge because we're not.
But we shouldn't gloss over a fact that when that speech was going to be delivered, there wasn't full alignment in the company. Just like there wasn't full alignment when we got into the grocery business. There's a lot of people in this company who thought we lost our minds when we started to try to get in groceries. A lot of people thought we lost our minds when we went to store pick up in parking lots, saying, what do you mean we're not going to make people come into our stores? E-commerce. There's these times where we look back on it and say, well, that was an easy decision. That made sense. That wasn't the case here. There were a lot of people who thought Lee Scott had lost his mind to give this speech.
True.
And so we look back and we look at the progress we made. Project Gigaton, which we achieved 6 years early, 46% of our electricity coming from renewable sources, what we're doing with our private brand label. A lot of progress has been made, but that doesn't make the simple fact that this was an easy decision. And we're at these points where you have these inflection points when you look ahead and you see the type of audacious goals we set, and that they look like they may not be achievable. At that time, when you made those goals around 3 simple priorities, you didn't really know how you're going to achieve them.
We didn't, and we told everybody we don't know how. And we started with our own assets. Like we estimated, and I think it was a rough estimate. If Kathleen checked our science and our math, it might not have been precise at the time, but about 8% of our footprint was our own assets, and about 92% was outside. It was in the supply chain. So walk the talk. You start with, what are we doing with our tractors? How do we use auxiliary power units? What are we doing with our buildings? You start working on what's happening with the supply chain later, and you ask all the suppliers, would you help us? And thankfully, the suppliers responded in a really positive manner and went to work. And you see it through Gigaton. In the beginning, it was waste elimination. It was other things that got everybody going. We assembled these teams, these sustainable value networks with academics and people that actually do know something about science to influence us and help us make good decisions.
So then we get to the point where we've made great progress. But when you look at it critically, a lot of what we're doing was stopping doing harm. Let's stop harming the planet. And then we had a mind shift change again, which we're saying, how can we be regenerative? And it's kind of a mouthful, and talking about how can we replenish, how can we add back to society. Can you now talk a little bit about our regenerative agenda and what that looks like going forward and what you want all of us to think about?
Yeah, you get to the point where you've been living beyond planetary boundaries for so long that you have to do more than just stop harm. And so the concept is just leave the campsite better than you found it. So I think of things like a factory. Imagine a production facility somewhere in the world, and how do they think about the raw materials they use? How do they treat waste? How do they think about paying people overtime? How do they think about all the other employment policies they have? Take a snapshot of that, and then Walmart shows up after that and makes it better. The employment practices get better, raw materials change a bit, waste gets handled in a different way. That facility is a campsite left better than the way we found it. And so regeneration is this point of we don't have just the luxury of stopping harm at this point. We got to do more than that. And it is a little bit hard to get your mind around, but I think if you isolate it to a product supply chain, for example, you can do it. And with Kathleen's leadership and the sustainability team's leadership and what the merchants, Latrice and Megan, do, I think we can do that. And you know, at Walmart, a small number times a big number ends up being a big number. And that's what we're trying to do, is to make things better than we found it.
So how do you see this fit into our broader strategy? When you think about, we know what our purpose is about saving people money and live better. Live better is that place where a lot of this, is found. Walk us through or show us how you think how this sits in the broader strategy.
Yeah, it fits within Live Better, and we have the world's densest slide to put up to show you. Like, we've filled the page with every word known to man. This was not done by a
hard.
consultant. This was not. It was done by our own team and me. But if you asked yourself, like, who is Walmart today? And I do get that question from time to time, like, what is this company? It's not just a brick and mortar retailer anymore. It's not just a domestic retailer anymore. What is it? We've answered that question with we're a people-led, tech-powered, omni-channel retailer dedicated to helping people save money and live better. Our purpose is what Sam said when he accepted the Presidential Medal of Freedom. This is just a description of who we are that connects to our purpose. How we do what we do is represented by our values and culture. But if you go down to the bottom right-hand corner, what are we trying to do as it relates to regeneration? Regeneration conceptually applies to everything we do. It applies to how we help our associates with opportunity. It's a concept. But specifically, as it relates to what we're trying to do to strengthen the planet, it's still three things. It's what we do with our merchandise, it's what we do with energy, emissions and energy, and it's what we do with waste. So if you need to focus on what the agenda is, though, that's the three-pointed agenda. It's kind of that simple, and that's how it fits within the total company's framework. So what we want to do is we want to get every associate in the company working towards a more regenerative outcome, a better outcome for the planet. By connecting dots and seeing the systems so that we can make decisions here that help others down the road and help the system overall.
And expectations have only grown. The challenge we face collectively, not just Walmart, but around the world is, as we've seen with Helene and others, is that the complexity of the challenges and the complexity of the work we have to do in order to help do our own part is hard. And it's going to require all of us collectively to get aligned. So I think a simplified approach like this, we can all wrap our heads around, is really important for us to be able to, because we know when we can get this army to march in the same direction, we can achieve a lot of great things.
I hope you all that are involved in this will help us recruit others and get more people involved. And I hope that you look at this work and it's one of the reasons why you love what you do. Like, it is one of the reasons why I love what I do. And, you know, when I'm done doing this, I want to look back on the work that we did and know that we help people. When you know, Walmart, if you boil it down to a word, in my mind, it's service. And this is one way that we serve. And it's about more than just driving sales. We do want to grow the company, of course, but the way that we go about doing it so that lots of other people benefit is a bigger idea, and that's what gets me up in the morning and gets me excited about coming to work early.
Well, hopefully future leaders will invite you back, and you can try to hide on the back row like Betty do, but they'll dust you off again and bring you up front. You can tell stories again. So, but no, thank you for your leadership. We are now going to turn it over to Chris Nicholas, who's going to talk a little bit from the product perspective, the journey we're on. Thanks.
Morning. Please come. I'm sitting near the Members Mark. It's kind of Members Mark and Walmart items here, but you know, it's nice to be close to the Members Mark items. So, welcome. There's a lot of fun to be had today, especially talking about items, which is kind of the most fun thing we do. Before we do that, though, I thought it might be good to just spend a moment on just reflecting on what's happening up in North Carolina, Asheville, Hendersonville, those places. This is a really tough time for those communities. They are in crisis still. And as ever, Walmart and Sam's Club have stood tall and are standing tall. I know personally, having spoken to the club managers in Asheville and Hendersonville yesterday, they are the center of the community. And I know that that's true of the Walmart stores too. Our supply chain teams, our EOC, our stores and our club teams are just standing tall, just like they did during Katrina in New Orleans, and we've seen again and again and again. So, just kudos to those people, and you know, and good luck to the communities. So, we're going to talk about merchandise, and we're going to talk about being a regenerative company. We just saw one of the top 3 things that we're working on is providing products that sustain people and the planet. Our goal, and this is not meant to be repetitive, but it bears repeating, is to be a regenerative company. It's a profound and it's a bold goal. And, you know, when we set it, I think Doug and Dan were very clear that we didn't know exactly how we were going to get there, and that was okay. It was good to have a big, bold goal and have us all work towards it because it was the work of a lifetime to achieve it. For me, bringing a regenerative mindset starts with how you live, how you work with your family, how you make decisions every day. And as a result of making those, living a regenerative life and making regenerative decisions, you can't help but run a regenerative company. And that's a really profound and important mindset if we want to transform the work that we all do. Doug, you just said it's not just this group of people, it's everybody all in this together. And I agree so profoundly with that. We have a slide. When we think about merchandise and merchandising, there's a lot of components to this, and we, over the time, from both people and a planet point of view, when it comes to merchandise, have really honed down on the things that really make a difference. And these look like just words, but there's a lot of work going on behind all of these. I mean, Gigaton, so reducing emissions here. Gigaton was a huge program. We actually delivered early because, well, thanks to many of you, and we're going again. And that's a really big deal, and I'm really proud of what you all have done. So you can see here, providing healthy choices, advancing supplier opportunity, and addressing risks. That's profoundly important, but it doesn't work if you haven't got the other side of the ledger. Protecting nature, reducing emissions, and reducing waste. You need both sides of that ledger to work. And when we're doing it right, we are a better business. People appreciate it, our customers appreciate it, our associates appreciate it, and of course the planet appreciates it too. There is something that I'd like to touch on, which is that regeneration, it is a mindset, and it is not the enemy of EDLP. It is not. What it does require is a different way to think about value chains, and how do we work with our partners, and how do we work together in solving the problems that our planet and our consumption creates. I'd love to share one example, Megan. Bronwyn Hutchins, who is our beverage buyer, she worked with we've got this amazing item, the Members Mark alkaline water. And we have just gotten to the point where we've got 100% recyclable plastic on that item. Now, why don't you do that? The reason you don't do it is because it costs you a lot more. Bronwyn worked with our supplier and said, if we committed more to you for longer, how would we re-engineer the supply chain? And so they were able to work with their partners all the way through the value chain. And actually, the cost came down. And so our members don't pay for it, and the planet gets better as a result of that item. That's really exciting, Megan. And that's the result of Bronwyn living a regenerative life and seeing those opportunities and having those conversations. I'm so excited to be on the merchandising panel today. This is, I don't want to say it's the most fun one, John and Kath, but it's the most fun one. And we're surrounded by great items here, which I'm really appreciative to. These are the people behind everything we buy. Megan, talking about having fun, any items or any stories you'd like to share about?
Oh, no fun here.
Sam's Club.
Never.
No, never.
Good morning, everyone. A couple stories to share with you this morning, Chris. I think one's around just like great associates making great choices, and an item story, because of course we're an item business at Sam's. So Elliot and Rochelle right here in front, you guys, a little wave. We practiced this morning, hey. So they are our wine experts at Sam's Club. And how many of you know the foil top that goes on wine? I know a lot about this. So this obviously, here, good example. So the foil top used to serve a purpose to keep the quality of the wine good, but now it's really just aesthetics. And guess where that foil top ends up ultimately? A landfill, right? So these two decided we're going to make a bold decision, and we're going to just not put the foil top on wine anymore. And these are like small things that can make a really big impact. And that was a really bold choice on their part. And I'm just so proud of them for thinking we can do something great for our product. The quality of wine is still just as good. I personally can attest to that. And we're also going to do something for the planet too. So can we give Elliot and Rochelle a round of applause? You can stand. They're being very shy. And the second one is around one of my favorite items, our Members Mark organic kids clothes. And I love this one for 3 reasons. We were talking to our Members Mark community. For those of you that don't know, it's 50,000 members that we talk to on a regular basis, and they get to give us feedback on the products that we sell to them at every stage of the life cycle. And so we were just having a conversation with them around kids' clothes. And they were like, hey, we really like this idea of organic kids' clothes, but when we look out in the marketplace, it is so expensive. So there's my first reason. Like, we can help with this. We can help this make affordable. The second thing when we were talking to them is they're like, it's really trendy. Like, if you look at apparel and all the trends that are happening right now, organic clothing is like on fire. And I love when Sam's Club, when we can be on trend. So I'm like, check. Number 2 reason I love it. And then the third one is we ship this item to both clubs and to our online business. And it sold okay in the clubs, but it was killing it online. And what we discovered is there's actually a member out there that wasn't necessarily in our clubs as much that found an item that really spoke to them. And we have a goal at Sam's to be 100% digitally engaged. All our members, we want to have a digital relationship with them. And if we can find more items like this, then we're going to be able to hit this goal as fast as possible. So I love that we learned a lot about our members and what they want. I love that we were able to serve our business in a really big way. And I love that we were doing something great for the planet as well. So it's a great item, and I can't wait to see more of them in our business.
I love all of that. And this item, by the way, is great. And I'm not going to pick it up because the last time I did, something fell off the table.
Good choice.
But I love the way that you're bringing all of those ideas together, and all of our merchants can see these systems that they're creating that allow you to have great items, great prices, and a regenerative mindset. Latrice, you buy a few things around the world. You must have some great examples for us too.
Well, they actually don't let me buy anything, but I've got a fantastic team that buys great items. And I think what we all know is what we do starts with being advocates for the customer. When we think about the customer, you said it, they care about price. They care about experience, and increasingly they care about sustainability. And it's our job to advocate on their behalf. And so when we think about ways to do that, we need to make sustainable easy. It shouldn't be complicated. It shouldn't be expensive. And so when I think about where we've started, we take the learnings in one area and then we reapply them. So anyone who's bought maybe sheets or bedding in our stores, you remember the big plastic wrap? It was a lot of plastic. So we decided we should take that off. Didn't really need it. You can see the comforter set back here that has just the cardboard band around it. So we took that learning, and we've got a great merchant and product development duo, Kim and Andy, who decided that in time for Halloween, we should do the same thing with costumes. So we're going to sell millions of costumes. Kim, would you come up here and help me demo? She didn't know that. Kim and Andy, well, she's better at it than I am, and she might have better luck taking it off the table. But I do think that it's worth you seeing. When we think about the savings that we wanted to create, we took it out of the plastic bag, we took the plastic hanger away, and then we gave mom away to see if the size would work for a kid. So we made it easy and simple for customers to have a sustainable choice, and took out tons of plastic, and hangers, and saved 29 metric tons of plastic. I mean, this is why these teams buy great items, because they are customer advocates. Obviously, we want to make sure we deliver on price and value, but we should make sustainability easy. And Kim and Andy have done that with Halloween costumes just in time for you to get yours at Walmart.
Isn't that a great example of just finding opportunity where you actually make the product better?
You make the product better. You take out cost. And when I think about our store associates, our job is make it simple for them to execute. You know how many of those costumes actually went back in the plastic bags after people took them out? Not so many. So that meant our store associates had to take the time to put them back in. This makes it easier to execute how we've placed them on the shelf, the ease of putting them back into the packages. So it's a win-win-win.
It's great, and I know it's hard to choose one example out of so many of them, Latrice, that you all are working on, which is really exciting. Andrea, talking about the complex value chains and how we find the value by connecting and understanding. Any examples you want to share with the group?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the examples that you both brought to life, because it's making the everyday choice the regenerative choice and at an incredible value. But there's also a trust element that customers expect from us. So when they pick up that can of great value tuna, they know that it's been sourced in a responsible way and that it has vessel monitoring to make sure that it doesn't have illegal fishing practices or anything that's destructive to the environment. I want to highlight another great example that we recently found on a trip to Yakima, Washington. And I know Carrie Mack, she's online, she's in our Yakima office. I want to highlight a farm that she introduced us to. It's the Royal Family Farm. They source our great value milk and some of the apples that you see here, a wide variety of apples. But they're doing some incredible work on regenerative farming. They have these amazing, like 8 acres of worm beds. I don't know if you've ever seen a worm bed. It's pretty cool. But they've got cows that they're doing the great value milk from. They're composting the dry waste. They're taking the liquid waste and putting it into the worm beds, and it's coming out the other side as casings, which you can imagine what that actually means. It's worm fertilizer, I would say, and it's going into the crops, and it's going into organic nutrients to grow our product and to grow our apples. And then even when customers change their minds, there's different apples that they loved 10 years ago that they don't like now. And so we have to flip those trees, and those trees get ground up into food for the worms and fertilizer back for the crops that they're growing. So they're doing these really cool regenerative practices. And the best part is they're super open with the rest of the industry and sharing those practices. So it's great to see these regenerative farmers coming to life, really thinking about the operationalizing the ecosystem in which they're bringing their products to life. And Carrie, kudos to you for really thinking about the power of the purchase order, because projects are incredible and they can unlock millions. But if we think about the power of our purchase order and how we apply that, that can unlock billions, and that's meaningful change within our business. So congrats, Carrie, for what you're doing.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. I love how real your story was right there, and without saying the words that you didn't want to say right there. And I don't blame you. When we look at the big goals we set out, it's important to measure progress too. We have a slide on that too. I think I won't go through this, but the thing I would push on is this. We should be really proud of the progress we've made. Big, bold goals, people getting aligned, people making a difference. But we've got a long way still to go. We have a long way still to go, and if we don't speed up, then this thing will get ahead of us, and we don't want that to happen either. Being regenerative isn't a choice. It's something that we have to do. It's something we have to commit to. And I genuinely believe personally that it's a big builder of long-term trust with our customers, with our communities, with our associates too. So that really, really matters. And I'm excited about all of you all being together. I've spoken to some of our really big suppliers who are working on true breakthrough ideas that will not cost more, that will make the planet better. So I'm filled with hope too, that we are on the right track. And it just takes all of us to make regenerative decisions every single day. So thank you for your help. I appreciate you all deeply. And thank you to the three of you for everything you do every day.
Thank you.
Okay.
Since 2005, Walmart and the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation have been working together to help protect America's natural landscapes for current and future generations. The Acres for America program started as a simple idea: conserve 1 acre of wildlife habitat for every acre used to develop Walmart stores. In the 20 years since, the program has far exceeded that goal, helping conserve more than 2 million acres nationwide, creating the leading public-private land conservation partnership in the U.S. The initiative is responsible for more than 120 projects spanning all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico. Projects have included Bristol Bay, Alaska, returning historical lands to the Rappahannock tribe in Virginia, and millions invested to improve outdoor public access for residents of cities and small towns alike. And as we recognize 2 decades of success protecting our vital lands, the only way to go is forward. And it's a journey Walmart and the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation look forward to taking together.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Hunter Hart, and I lead our real estate division, and our team oversees the Acres for America program. So who all out here are familiar with Acres for America? So we've still got some work to do on awareness, but overall, it's a program that's been around for 2 decades. It's a partnership with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. We've preserved over 2 million acres in that time frame, which has a financial impact of over $1 billion. Pretty impressive numbers. But for me, it's really even more than that. It's personal. I'm an avid outdoorsman, I'm a hunter, and I'm a dad. And I just can't imagine my kids, their kids, and our future generations not growing up and experiencing the same great outdoors and nature that I've been able to benefit from. So to help me with that, invited a couple of friends up, Chris from National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and Kirsten Evans, Senior Vice President and leader of Ozark Trails for merchandising. So as we get started, thank you both for being here. Chris, we've obviously had a storied program, a lot of history. Can you talk about how the partnership has evolved over the years?
Yeah, thanks, Hunter, and I really appreciate being here. We got some work to do in telling people about the program, but we're going to do that. This National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, at the end of the day, is a conservation organization, and we're dedicated to protecting America's wildlife and their habitats for future generations. And 20 years ago, Walmart came to us and said, we want to help you do that through the Acres for America program. And we have been immensely successful. And I think hearing the stories earlier today about that time at Walmart was really interesting because we've been doing it very quietly. And now we've got 120 projects and 2 million acres that have been protected because of this partnership. And there's some amazing stories in there. And I think over the next, looking forward, eventually we're going to be telling a lot of those stories and doing a lot more work. I think one other thing we've really learned is that the power of a corporate partnership and what can happen, and especially when you're not looking to take all the credit for it all the time. And we work the same way, that quietly our partners on the ground in communities all over the country can do amazing things. That's one other thing that we've learned is I don't want to do a COVID story, but kind of during the pandemic, everything shut down. And the one thing that didn't close was the outdoors, and people went, and they went a lot. And since the pandemic, they've kept going. And so I'm really proud that those 2 million acres of public access and places, nature-based places, open spaces, parks, were there for those people and are still there and will be there for the next generation as well.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And as we think about how we move forward, we also look back to our past and how we got started with the program. And it's another example of how one Walmart associate had an idea. And it was a simple idea. We were growing rapidly, and the question that Kurt Dupes posed to Rob Walton at the time was, how do we take 1 acre of land that we disturb and we build a new store on, and how do we replace that acre, at least 1 acre, by the way, for conservation and long-term protection? That idea, Rob loved the idea. The rest is history. The program has taken off. Kirk's actually with us today. So Kurt, could you stand so we can appreciate your contribution? Thank you, Kurt.
I just had an idea. These are the conservation heroes that made a little seed turn into a giant sequoia tree. I'm just so proud of what you all have done. It's incredible. It's bodacious. It's audacious. It's beyond belief for me. But tell your friends, tell your family, tell your neighbors what Walmart's doing for conservation. You've got 2 million associates out there. Every one of them needs to know what you're doing so they can share it with the world. And thank you all for everything you do.
Thanks for that, Kurt. Really appreciate it. And with all of our proud history and where we've made progress, there's really not a more fitting opportunity than this morning, Chris, to announce that we're extending our partnership between Walmart, National Fish and Wildlife Foundation for the next 10 years so we can preserve even more acreage for our future. So next, Chris, as we think about where we go from here, how about you talk about the growth and what you see next?
Yeah, I think, first of all, thank you. This is an amazing partnership, and another decade of it is going to do even more for the communities across America, and we're really excited to be a part of this. I think looking forward, we're going to see projects that are starting to be these win-win-wins, where we're looking at communities that are saying, how can we maybe preserve some of our economic vitality through things like a sustainable forest that also involves mountain biking trails and also involves hunting and fishing opportunities, and oh, by the way, also protects our drinking water. How can we look at places where we can expand a state park that's going to bring more tourism to our communities and people, involving things like the Ozark Trail Partnership that we're going to talk about a little bit too. I think there's so much out there that is a possibility. I mean, I could rattle off, and I think this is the fun part. We've got 120 projects that we've already worked on. Last night, I was talking with Kathleen about a project in Albuquerque on the south side of that community, where there's now a national wildlife refuge in the city of Albuquerque, and they're actively restoring wetlands. There are sandhill cranes coming back, but they've got a huge youth program that's engaging those folks in that community in the restoration and the future of a natural area in the heart of Albuquerque. Stuff like that is so cool, and I think we're going to do dozens more of those kind of projects together, and really looking forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Really looking forward to it as well. Kirsten, so you lead our Ozark Trail brand for the merchandising team. So it's a great brand. It also fits really well with the outdoors. Can you talk about the integration of how we're working together?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Can you hear me? So Ozark Trail is one of our oldest and most beloved brands at Walmart. It was launched in 1987. And the mission was at that time, and it continues to be, about accessibility. And we wanted to provide, and still do, affordable products that are well designed and durable and help people get into the great outdoors. The price of the checklist should not be an inhibitor, and we want individuals and families to get outside and enjoy. And we've been growing and growing, and our confidence in Ozark Trail has grown. We've had some successful brand extensions into things like biking and fashion categories, and the customers really responding to that accessibility proposition. We heard some examples of packaging too, and what we like to say on our private brand team is that the customer experience has to be looked at one item experience at a time. And having sustainable packaging as part of the Ozark Trail mission is incredibly important. The team is working so hard to make sure we just smash our 2025 private brand packaging commitments, and we're super excited and rallying around them. But, it's not just about goal attainment. It's about the marriage of what the customer cares about and what's good for the greater world. And people who own Ozark Trail care about sustainability, and they care about conservationism. And it's pretty natural that they would, because they're spending time outside, and it incentivizes everyone to take care of the environment. And so we think the more people who we can get involved in the Ozark Trail brand proposition, the better it is for the impact on the environment. But we talked about visibility, and visibility is really important. And I think it's important for our customers, but it's also important for our associates and the communities we serve. And so I'm really excited that starting next year, we're going to be able to create visibility on our Ozark Trail packaging. So when people see our products online or in the store, they take it home, they can read about the Acres for America program, and they can learn how to get involved. And we're not going to stop there, Hunter. We're going to incorporate in some areas of our site experience and our product experience. And we could not be more proud to up the visibility on this important program. And we think it will endear more people to the great outdoors, as well as to Ozark Trail brand and Walmart.
Yeah, thanks, Kirsten. So Chris, last question. If for those of us that are in the audience or watching online, how do you recommend more associates be able to learn more about the program, get involved, and just do more?
Yeah, well, I think Kirsten talked about, first of all, this Ozark Trail approach is going to be fantastic. Kurt, said spread the word. There's a lot, it's an all hands on deck approach on this, but we're going to be putting out more information about the program both for associates and for customers, so people can really connect. And at least for me personally, it's like, just keep doing what you're doing. If you enjoy hunting and fishing, go do that. If you're a bird watcher or a mountain biker, go do that. And when you're there, get a little curious. Like, what does it take to put this place together, where this park or this state park, or what agency is doing this, or what volunteer group is out there? Is there a cleanup day? Is there a volunteer day I can do through my workplace or through my store? Just look for those kinds of things, because I've seen some amazing partnerships that are out there, and every open space, every natural area, every state park comes from a story of a community wanting to invest in itself and do something better and make the world a better place. And when you get loggers and mountain bikers and bird watchers and hunters all together, you get some pretty powerful partnerships, and we're really excited to keep investing in those with Walmart for the next decade.
And again, thank you both for the time this morning. Really excited to be working with you both. And it does feel like we're just getting started, which is very exciting. But I'll tell you something else very exciting. It's our new home office campus. We're going to roll a tape and show you a preview.
In the beginning, the idea of big nature was something that the principals on our team presented in the interview. It started with a little sketch that essentially showed the property just covered in trees and pulling in the natural water systems through the campus.
I was really impressed with the constant attention to sustainability and health and wellness that Walmart was really trying to infuse in this project. I'm a big mountain biker, so I was interested in a lot of the objectives that the client had and in the natural beauty of the area.
Great communities build great trails, and great trails build great communities. And I think that sort of symbiotic relationship between community and trail is one of the key insights that has driven our work. And it's more than an insight, it's really a belief in what we do.
The way the campus has been intentionally designed to interweave trails really connects this campus in a way that is fun for the associates, it's fun for the community, and it's an example to the rest of the world. It's good for you to move your body. It's good for you to get active. And when we feel good about ourselves and we're connected to nature, we live a more grounded, productive life.
Morning. How are we doing? Good. Great morning. I want to start back in about 2004, similar to where Doug and Dan were this morning, and I want to talk about energy. And for me, I got involved in sustainability early in my career, late 2004. I didn't know what the word meant either. And over the next year or two, that led me on a journey of becoming involved with one of our sustainable value networks, the Energy Network. And at some point, late 05, 06, I raised my hand and said, I want to lead this work. I was really inspired by it. And it gave me a chance early in my career to learn about the power of looking inside and looking outside to find the very best answers for our customers, for the environment, and importantly, for the country. So if you remember about that time, energy costs were rising. Feels familiar, right? We'd had power outages in the Northeast that were big around the country. We had Katrina, and we learned the power of focus. And in that time, the power of focus led us to the light bulb. I was the lighting buyer, I was the hardware DMM, and we decided that we were going to take on something big, and we were going to try to move customers from being accepting of the incandescent light bulb to the CFL, which eventually was the LED light bulb. And so why was that important? The incandescent light bulb was a 100-watt bulb. It was hot, it worked, it was inexpensive. But the incandescent, you see over on your left, that light bulb takes about 500 pounds of coal to run over its lifetime. It was 100 watts, so the shift to the CFL at 13 watts helped the country bend the curve on cost, and it helped the country bend the curve on power usage. And those are really important things that Walmart was able to do. And in early 2006, a bunch of us went to Las Vegas with long reason why we chose the location, but the City of Lights, and we agreed we were going to sell 100 million CFLs, 30 million at Sam's, 70 million at Walmart US. We set a timeline and we beat it. So many of us, Marvin, we're really good at setting a number and then get everyone aligned and we go out and we beat the number.
and we helped bend the curve on that. And it made a difference for the country, and it made a difference for the grid. And so we find ourselves here today, right at the point where we can see over the next 5 to 6 years, upwards of maybe a third or more of our power may be used to power the way we're shifting. We give customers in the world the access to knowledge with an artificial intelligence and generative AI. So we're at another one of those points where we're going to have to do something to bend the curve, or we're going to be in a really tough situation like we were back in 2000. So I'm excited today to bring up a couple people on our team, Vishal Kapadia, who is, we'll just say the SVP of everything energy at Walmart, and Jerome Del Porto. We're going to talk about what this work has led to, Project Gigaton, but also what's coming in the future. So please welcome these guys up. Well, Vishal, maybe start with you. You've been in the energy space a long time. Now we've gotten to know each other a bit more. I love working with Vishal. He's an expert in the space. He's thinking ahead. But for the whole group, all of our associates and everyone around, start with where we are now and where do you think we're headed?
Yeah, well, look, it's an interesting time for sure. We're living in a time where, every other week you've got a nuclear plant coming back from the dead. And so it's really a function of the fact that, for the first time in over 2 decades, we've got power demand increasing here in the U.S. And at the same time, we're growing our operations. We're investing in automation across our footprint. And, whereas we historically used to really just be focused on managing costs and reducing emissions, we're now having to contend with issues across what I call the entire acre of energy considerations, and that's around access, cost, resilience, and emissions. And so we're tackling that problem in 2 ways. At one level is at our sites, and then also trying to attack it at a system level as well. At our sites, we're investing in solar and storage, other on-site power solutions that will help us reduce costs, enhance resilience, and do so in a zero emissions way. We've got over 350 locations today that have some form of solar and storage on them. And by the end of this year, we'll have taken investment decisions on adding that solar and storage to another 100 locations across our footprint. Now, when you think about things at a system level, we need clean power to serve all that demand. We need it to be affordable and we need it to be reliable. And we're investing to help enable that. That includes things like large-scale projects that can help meet that demand for energy at scale, but also help improve transmission grid infrastructure and create more grid reliability to address a lot of the outages that we're seeing across our system. But on top of that, we're also attacking the problem through smaller-scale projects, things like community solar, which help expand access to clean energy, particularly to thousands of low and moderate income households in a way that helps them save money, but also has the benefit of helping strengthen grid infrastructure at a more localized level. And in the case of both of these projects, they deliver lasting benefits in the communities in terms of new tax revenues and new jobs across the system. So we're really excited about the work we're doing on that front. But in addition to that, we've also got an access and a resilience issue when it comes to EV charging infrastructure in this country. And I'm happy to say that, starting later this year, we'll be rolling out the Walmart charging experience at locations across the Phoenix and Dallas-Fort Worth area. So John, we got a long road to travel to transform in the way that we need to, and there's some real challenges ahead of us just given the overall environment that we're facing from a demand standpoint. But I'm pretty excited about the solutions that we've developed and that we're deploying and are helping attack that problem. We got a lot more stuff coming down the pike to be able to address this for our customers, our associates, and our communities.
Yeah, I love what you said. We have a long road to travel. We started this idea with connecting the state of Washington and Miami and being able to enable people to drive an EV from one to the other. So it is a long road.
Indeed.
And we want to eliminate range anxiety. Yep. We think we can do that. Jerome, you're doing some really exciting work. We heard a bit about this morning, but you're right in the middle of merchandising, sourcing, our suppliers. You heard earlier the breakout of how much energy is in our footprint and then our supply chain and suppliers. So talk about what you're excited about and what you think is next in the space.
Thank you, John. Well, there's a lot of things to be excited. So working with Vishal and really all of you in this room to help reduce emission overall. If I can take us back to 2017 when we started Project Gigaton, there was no widely accepted way to measure emission across the supply chain. So instead of waiting for one way to come, Walmart got going. We started working with our NGO partners, EDF, WWF, and we started to help the suppliers reduce in the most critical areas of emissions. So we went out there, we put calculators on Project Gigaton to help measure, help set target, track progress and action plans. But we didn't stop just here. We kept listening to the supplier and say, what do you want? What do you need to be able to help reduce emissions? And that's where we started to do share learning, best practice sharing across the board. We went and we created Gigaton PPA, a way to give small and medium-sized companies access to the renewable energy that Vishal just tell you about. We work with partners such as HSBC to create financing solutions for this decarbonization project. And another tool that we'll mention is Circular Connector. We know there's a gap between the companies who are looking for sustainable packaging and the innovators willing to offer them, and Circular Connector is here just to bridge that gap. So I will share with you that now, for the life of the project, we have about 5,900 suppliers participating into Project Gigaton. They represent about 75% of the US business. And earlier this year, we shared that you, the suppliers, have reported projects expected to reduce or avoid 1 billion metric ton of emissions. So a big congratulations to all of you for all the work that you're doing.
I think, Jerome, that the obvious question is how to go faster, and I'm going to answer for you. We have 5,900 suppliers participating. We have hundreds of thousands of suppliers. So what the invitation is, let us help you be a part of this solution, and I think we together can make a big difference. Last question, Vishal, for you. You've taught me that there are 4 challenges in energy: generation, transmission, storage, and cost. That's the entire network, of course. But you know, what do you think it is that our 2 million associates around the world can do today to participate in becoming part of the solution? I had a small group a few years ago that we found a way to participate. It was inspiring, it was exciting. I learned a lot from it. What can all of our people do to help?
Yeah, well, look, I think when you think about the projects that we're investing in, you know, we've done about 1 gigawatt of new capacity this year. That's enough to power over 200,000 households around the country. And so we're kind of taking care of that issue at an overall system level and impacting at scale. I think, you know, this is one of those problems, though, where, you know, a lot of little things will end up coming together to make a really big difference. And, you know, the saying goes is that the cheapest and greenest electrons are the ones that you don't use. And so, you know, even if it's little things like, you know, when you leave a room, you flip the light switch off or take your thermostat up or down a degree or two when you can, you know, those are the sorts of things that, you know, given the circumstances that we're facing and the demand for power, they will add up to be able to make a pretty big difference. And so I think just consciously being more efficient in how we use energy is sort of at the top of the list. The other thing that I would sort of just mention is that, look, you know, while we've got a pretty good playbook and we feel good about what we're executing on, we also recognize, and I think at a societal level, that we don't have the solutions to all of these problems right now. And so certainly, you know, the best ideas tend to come from the bottom up. And so, you know, would extend an invitation to everybody to feel free to communicate those ideas so that we can help start to figure out how to implement them and get to where we need to get to from an outcome standpoint.
Yeah, I love that. The little things, closing the freezer door, keeping things cool when they need to be. Refrigeration is such a big part of what we do. So for all of our associates, the little things matter, whether it's in packaging or energy usage in facilities, but collectively we can come up with the ideas. And the last thing I think you said that I think is really important is necessity is the mother of innovation. And we are at a point where we're going to need more. Therefore, we're going to have to all work together. So just invite you in to participate. All the suppliers that are involved, thank you so much. For those who are not involved, please get involved. We'd love to help. We'd love to make a difference together. This is an exciting space, a challenging space. Thank you to both of you for what you're doing. We're making a real difference. Thanks, everybody.
Walmart is really taking a holistic view of managing food waste before it happens by tackling across our full value chain, really looking at it end to end. It all starts with great partnerships with suppliers like PepsiCo and General Mills, looking at regenerative agriculture practices to grow food more efficiently. We've just launched a brand new dashboard for our Walmart store associates here in the United States. It shows across the full value chain what's happening to that food, how much was donated, how much was recycled, and more importantly, also what those financial impacts are to the business. When food goes unsold, the next priority is to donate. Through our partnership with Feeding America, we can keep food out of the landfill. making sure that that healthy, nutritious food is passed on to our local community in need, doing great things for people and the planet. Through Zero DPAC, we're working in partnership with Denali to build out food waste recycling infrastructure on a national scale. One key barrier involves having to remove that product packaging in order to make sure the product can be recycled responsibly. We've taken that burden off of our associates, shifted it to downstream machines that do this all for us. We've now unlocked the potential to close the loop, turning Walmart's food waste into product that can be sold, such as compost, on the shelves for our customers, making the sustainable option the easy option, and keeping food out of landfill and protecting our planet.
Good morning. I'm Kath McClay. I look after Walmart International, and I have the privilege to talk to you today about eliminating waste. I wanted to have join me two people who have real influence in this organization, Christina Ronsky, who is our CEO of Central America, and Cedric Clark, who is our EVP of Store Operations in Walmart US. You know, when I've been thinking about eliminating waste, actually, this is an odd bridge, but I have had my in-laws staying with me for the last 4.5 weeks, and they go home today. So I have loved having them with me, but...
Interesting way to look at it.
The point I wanted to make was that they are from this very small town in New Zealand of about 15,000 people, and they are acutely aware of how you reduce, recycle, and reuse. And they're in their late 70s, and it made me recognize this is not a new problem that we're dealing with or a new skill that we have. This is something that I think generations before us were very focused on. Finite resources in the world, and how do we make sure that we are leaving the world in a clean place? And so this is old capabilities that we're bringing back. I was really impressed recently when I was found out in Mexico. We have found a way to take food waste and turn it into soap. So the teams there, whenever we have excess product in stores, we're very proud that we can pass that on to Food Bank. But sometimes the produce and the vegetables have passed a point where we can pass it to Food Bank. And in those instances, the team have learned how to turn that into soap. They've put it in a recycled plastic bottle, and we now use it in all of our FCs. And let me reassure you, it doesn't smell like you're washing your hands in food waste. It smells like eucalyptus. It's quite delightful. So I think there's really ingenuitive ways that we as a company are thinking about how we eliminate waste. And there we're really focused on how do you reduce waste, how do you reduce packaging, and how do you create a more circular economy. So I thought I might just pass it to you, Christina, and ask, when you're thinking about your role and your ability to be able to make an influence, how are you thinking about sustainability and reducing waste in Central America?
So we are focused on making sure that we work on the circular economy. And there are so many examples that we have in our region on focusing on reducing waste. One of them is that we are actually setting up a biodigesting plant in one of our plants in Costa Rica. So what we do is with that food that becomes unsellable, we are able to transform it into compost. So that will be live in Q4 this year, and we will be able to do that. But the work is for everybody and in every area. Another example that I can think about is in our merchandising team. So in 2023, the merchandising team was looking at our perishable items and trying to find a better pricing for our customers. And when they are looking at the specs of our produce, for example, when you see the carrots that might be a little twisted, or the peppers that could be a little round versus completely straight. So looking at produce that is perfectly good, but could have little imperfections, they created a program that was imperfect by good. And that came into our stores. We were able to negotiate really good prices for our customers, reduce waste, and be able to focus on that. So the focus on reducing waste actually also is an everyday low cost for us that we can pass into our customers. Another example that I can think of is in our stores. In our stores, in 2019, we initiated in Central America to reduce the plastics within our stores, so reducing the plastic bags. After testing it, in 2021, we decided to expand it to all of our 5 countries, and we completely reduced or eliminated the use of the plastic bag. As of today, we have actually eliminated 1.1 billion bags from usage, and also it's creating a habit with our customers to bring their own bags. So reducing waste is the job of everybody, and we're focusing on making sure that every part of our all of our areas are thinking about it in different ways that we can have an impact.
Yeah, and I love how you're engaging everybody as part of that process. Cedric, I know you've been thinking about how do you make the less wasteful option the default option. So talk to me a little bit about that and how you've made that a call to arms.
Yeah, first, Dan, thanks for the story about you going to the P&L review sustainable deal. There's hope for us, which is great. But I want to key on that a bit. When we think about the journey that we've been on, you know, it's about $3 billion of waste when you look at even markdowns and shrink from a fresh standpoint. That's a lot. And what could we do? And we have a goal of basically diverting 90% of our operational waste, which means we can leverage food banks, different frameworks for that. What's really amazing for us is it's not this like arduous big task. It's about listening to the teams. And how about if you think about just the lettuce? If we could think about when the lettuce comes in, and obviously Dave Eugenia's supply chain, we're leveraging automation, we're tracking it on its way in, which is great. But once it gets to the store, the framework is to be the best place to shop. We want that customer to have the best experience. Well, across 4,000, plus stores, if you don't have consistency in when do you go pull it from the back in refrigeration because it lasts longer, when you bring it out to where the customer is going to have it, we've taken simple steps. We called it our base operating structure, where we've gotten all of our teams aligned on doing the same key focuses in key areas, and fresh waste being one of them. And we're down, if you think about the average super center, it's about $120 million. This year to date, we've already reduced our waste by 116. And our goal is to be, or we're projected to be at 232 by the end of the year. But you know what the goal really is going to be in 2030? How could we have 50% reduction in our food waste? And there's so many. I love John's challenge of like, there's inside and outside. Part of this scenario of like having this waste diverted is it can still be used, by people that have need. There's opportunities where you see the DPAC video up there to where it's taken upstream, where we're taking that out of the stores, but the stores are able to actually just focus on getting it there quickly so we can resolve that. But I think my exciting framework in the job that I have with over 1.3 million associates is how do we get the teams to engage in that? And then, Jib, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. I look at sustainability. Regeneration is really the framework that I like to use. I think it really starts with you as a leader. And so me leading the charge, what am I doing? It can start with yourself personally, and how are you recycling at home? People are watching what we do with the businesses that we run. And then once you get to do that in your internal structure with your teams, it catches on. And so I'm just excited what we're doing in Walmart US. We're going to put ourselves in a position where we'll meet that goal. We're at 84% of our operational waste being diverted on a 90% goal. But we got to move fast on that. And we just want to make sure, you think of Lee Scott in 2005, the person kind of putting the challenge out there. How can we bring this to life sooner? So I'm really excited about it. And what's cool about this whole summit, this is all tangible. It's very tangible.
Yeah, it's tangible, but making a real difference in the world. And it takes some ingenuity as well too. And you're trying to design it so it's the easy option, not the hard option. Last question, just quickly to leave us with. Why does this matter to you?
Well, first, I have 2 daughters, and I think that similar to the behaviors with your in-laws, they are the ones that are constantly teaching me, right? So everything starts at home. So that's important, but also matters because I think all of us together can make an impact. It starts with each one of us. One thing I wanted to mention also is that beyond us, we are partnering also with our suppliers, and the behaviors of recycling and reducing waste is important. So as easy as it is now to pick up our product, people can do a drop-off of their waste and recycle in our store. So we have about 50 points there. So I think that is very important, where we can make an impact in the planet.
Yeah, and I'll jump in. I mean, why does it matter to me? I think the framing of this is when you really step back, you know, the planet is our habitat. For anyone that has a pet or a reptile in a, aquarium and all the things, the framing is you have to have this perfect temperature, you have to have the perfect materials for them, you have to have the perfect alkaline framework to have that fish live. I think about the earth. And so, why it matters to me, I have 4 kids, amazing kids. I have, a mother that's aging. And I just want to maximize time with them. And I can't maximize that time if what we're doing, we're running out of space in landfills, when we're seeing the weather, unfortunately, what happened even just this past week, is from things that we can control. And so it really means something to me because, I think Hunter mentioned it. I want my children to have the experiences that I've had, and could it actually be better, and could we actually reverse what has maybe been challenged?
Well said. Thank you both. We do live on a beautiful and wild planet, and I'm going to take a moment just to welcome our next speaker. Thank you both. I had the privilege to raft down a very wild river with Rick last year. He is an outdoorsman, a writer, and an advocate for sustainability and conservation. I think he spent 15 years working for Patagonia as their Vice President of Environmental Affairs and Public Engagement. And he has also authored 7 books. His memoir, Life Lived Wild, will come out shortly. But if that's not enough, National Geographic also recently presented Rick with the Lifetime Achievement in Adventure Award. So, as a little sneak peek to what might come in this book that I hope you're as curious about as I am, please let me welcome to the stage Rick.
Thank you, Kath, and Doug and Dan, the senior leadership, all the associates at Walmart, for the opportunity to present to you this morning. In 1980, I was invited to join a team of mountaineers to go to the People's Republic of China to attempt to climb a 25,000-foot mountain called Minyakonka. It's clicking here. And it was my kind of trip. It was a remote region, nearly unknown to the outside world. And I was with a strong team of close friends, including Yvonne Chouinard, who you see here, making the first ascent of the Great Wall, the first non-Mongol ascent of the Great Wall. And another close friend was Jonathan Wright, and he was my climbing partner and my business partner. I was a writer, he was a photographer, and after the climb, we had a deal with National Geographic to journey from Tibet to Nepal to do a story on what then was the newly chartered Mount Everest National Park. And for Jonathan and me, it was a trip come true, a dream come true. Everything was going okay until one day at 20,000 feet, 4 of us triggered an avalanche, including Jonathan and Yvonne, swept down the mountain 1,500 vertical feet, and I was sure the whole time I was dead. But then it stopped, and all of us were alive, but we were injured, and none as badly as Jonathan. I held him in my arms, trying to keep him alive, but after a half hour, he died. And I buried him under a mound of rocks and went home and went into deep introspection, wondering if I could continue as a climber. I didn't know if I could, and it took me 2 years to think about what I'd learned, what I had taken from the high elevations and brought down to my life at sea level. I thought about how in my early 20s I'd worked so hard to learn how to be a high altitude mountaineer, and how that had led to an invitation to join. Back then was only the second American team to climb Mount Everest. And I thought how that had led to an invitation to join a team to climb the second highest mountain in the world, K2. And I thought how deep I had to dig to keep putting one foot in front of the other, where we had to forge the route and fix the ropes and carry the supplies to the camps ourselves, because there were no Sherpas to help us. And I remembered the first storm where we stayed in our ice camp hoping it was going to be short, but we were eating food and burning fuel. We worked so hard to get up there, and we had no choice but to go all the way back down to base camp. And the storm lasted a week. And when it cleared, we had to work ourselves back up the mountain. That took another 4 days, and we'd only started pushing the route higher when the next storm hit. And we had to go all the way down to base camp again, and there were 6 storms altogether. And each one, we just struggled to dig out our tents, pull out the ropes. And now looking up, we still had the summit head wall in front of us, and timbers were thin, food and supplies were short. And at this point, we've been on the climb for 2 months. And then 4 of us were selected at the 11th hour to make an attempt at the summit. And we put in one more camp at 26,000 feet. And the next day, the weather held, but the climbing was really hard, including this one section at 27,000 feet where we had to climb steep rock covered in ice. And we'd also decided by then to try to climb without oxygen. Nobody had ever done that. But finally, we made the summit. That's me on top of what's now considered the hardest high altitude mountain in the world to climb. And you know, it's a really good thing we didn't know that back then. But we did it. The first American ascent of K2, the first ever without supplemental oxygen. And I took that lesson of tenacity back to my life at sea level. And whenever I encountered an obstacle I didn't know if I could get over, I just remembered that I'd stayed above 18,000 feet for 68 days in a row. And it became a yardstick against which I could measure my sea level challenges. And it really worked. And there were other lessons, like how on a climb you make a plan, but inevitably stuff goes wrong, and you got to learn how to adjust, to be flexible. And maybe the most important lesson, and the hardest to learn because it's kind of subtle, so it's not easy to see it. And Doug mentioned this morning in other ways too, but it's how the goal really isn't the summit. It's the footsteps that it takes to get there. And after that avalanche, I realized that I had changed even more. Sometimes I was waking up just amazed to be alive. And I remember one day walking from my car to the office and stopping in the parking lot and just standing there to feel the side of my face that was in sun against the side that was in shadow. And in a way, it was being reborn with this new awareness of what it's like just to be alive. And with that awareness, how quickly any of us in this room this morning could not be alive. And a few years later, I ran into that poem by Mary Oliver, her famous one, Summer's Day. I see nods here, with that famous line, when the poem commanded all of us, tell me what you plan to do with your one wild and precious life. And that was my challenge, a challenge that included this decision whether I was going to go back to mountaineering. And then I got married to my wife, Jennifer, and that, of course, made it more difficult. But mountaineering was what I did, and my time in the mountains and my time in wild nature had shaped who I was. And I kept asking myself if the rewards outweighed the risks. And then Jennifer said, Rick, maybe the higher risk is not going back and not staying true to who you are. And maybe more importantly, think about this, not meeting new people who might teach you new things and send you in new directions. So I returned to adventure, both as avocation and vocation. I made my living writing and photographing and filming the adventures I was on all 7 continents. And then Kath, the memoir I wrote, Life Lived Wild, is actually out now. And in thinking about that book, I realized I had spent 5 years in small tents in the middle of really wild places. And Jennifer was right, because I had met new people that had sent me in new directions. And the two most important were my climbing partners and my mentors, Yvonne Chouinard on the right and Doug Tompkins. And I started adventuring with Yvonne in the early 70s and with Doug in the early 80s. And together we had kayaked and climbed in remote fjords in the Straits of Magellan. We'd scaled unclimbed peaks in Bhutan. Once with my close friend Jib, who you know is here with us this morning, we paddled a river in eastern Siberia, nearly unknown to the outside world. And on all these trips, Doug brought books that he was reading that he would pass to me. And around our campfires, our conversations inevitably turned to the twin interlocked crises of climate and extinction. And we began to see through our own eyes the forest clear cut that were going to take generations to regrow if they ever do. We witnessed the overgrazing of grasslands and turning them into deserts. And maybe the most alarming, with our own eyes, we were witnessing the glaciers we climbed in our youths disappear, witnessing geologic time and human time. And when you see planetary changes with your own eyes and you begin to understand them at a visceral level, you're obligated to do something about it, to use whatever tools you own to do your part to address these interlocked crises. And what were our tools? Well, in addition to being adventurers, the three of us were business people. I owned a small company with 20 employees that licensed outdoor and environmental content to advertising agencies. And back in the 60s, Doug had started a company making sleeping bags and packs and tents, and he called his little startup the North Face. And then a few years later, Yvonne started his company that he called Patagonia, because he and Doug had been in Patagonia, the place that made a big impression on him. And when Doug got back from that trip, he sold the North Face because he found out while he was gone, his wife had started sewing dresses, and they called their new company Esprit. And by the 80s, both Esprit and Patagonia were committed to environmental protection. And then in the early aughts, Patagonia offered me a job overseeing the company's environmental and sustainability initiatives. And I'd always worked for myself. I'd always been self-employed. And even though it was such a beautiful campus, I told my wife, I'm not sure I can work for anybody else. I don't know if I could take the job. And she said, Rick, you're always telling me you like to try new things. How about this one called having a regular job? I had a 15-year run at Patagonia, working with my colleagues, doing everything we could to save our one and only home planet. And for me, the highlights included on my watch, launching our Warmwear partnership with our customers to take mutual responsibility for the stuff that we made and they bought, incentivizing them to repair, reuse, recycle, and most controversially to reduce, a word that's been used this morning a little bit. But I'm most proud of our partnership with you guys here at Walmart to co-found the Sustainable Apparel Coalition. And when I first proposed the idea, I said, listen, let's codename it David and Goliath. And you guys said, okay, but there's one condition. And I thought, uh-oh, going south before it can go north. And you guys said the condition is that we're David and you're Goliath. And I said, okay, whatever. So we launched the effort. And earlier this year, it was rebranded as Cascale, and also its sister for-profit company, Worldly. I have two of my Worldly associates here with us this morning, Adele and Kevin. And together we launched the Higg Index. The initiative continues to scale rapidly. There's now over 24,000 facilities around the world using the Higg to measure their impact and to year over year use that to decrease environmental impact and increase social justice. So those are just two ways that we realize Patagonia's mission to save the home planet, but it doesn't explain the why we should save our home planet. And part of the answer to that question comes from all the years and months that Doug and I and others of my friends spent in wild nature. The lessons we took from the high places and brought down to sea level and reminded ourselves that all business depends on a healthy stream of resources, that it can only come from a healthy planet, that without healthy air and water, you can't have healthy societies, and without healthy societies, how are you going to have healthy markets? And this inextricable linkage was summarized by Yvonne's mentor and Patagonia's mentor, David Brower, who reminded all of us that there is no business on a dead planet. I didn't come here this morning to tell you any of that stuff, because you already know it. You know about the business value of sustainability. That's why you're here this morning. You know why we all need to protect the planet. So since you already know that, I'm gonna tell you one more story. How when I started at Patagonia, we had an annual intern program where every summer we filled about 10 positions from a pool of about 10,000 applicants that made it a little harder to get into Patagonia than it is to get into Harvard. One year, those interns included a young woman who was an active and very skilled outdoor athlete. She just turned 20. She'd been 1 year old when her father died in my arms on that avalanche in Tibet. And Jonathan had named her Asia after his favorite place in the world. And after we had buried him in that remote grave, Yvonne and I had tried to be fill-in parents. And now she was an intern, 20 years old. And I knew she was going to want to know more about how her father had died, because her mother had shut their memory out of their lives. And sure enough, she asked me if we could have a chat. And I didn't hold back. I told her how her father had died. He hadn't died right away. How I'd looked in his eyes, trying to tell him everything was going to be okay. And she thanked me and then said, "That's not the only thing I want to talk about. I have a favor. I want you to take me back to that mountain where my father died, and I want to climb up the mountain and find him." I said I needed to go to my wife and ask her. And she said, "Rick, Asia's not asking you to find her father. She's asking you to be her father." And I knew that if Jonathan had lived, he would have taken his daughter on some of the same trips he was on, and certainly those trips would have included Asia, the place. So that's what Asia and I did. We journeyed to the Everest region, where I had a lot of Sherpa friends who had been Jonathan's friends, who became her friends. We ventured to Western Tibet into mountains that had hardly been explored, where we endured 60-mile-an-hour winds to climb a 21,000-foot peak that had never been summited. And then in Eastern Tibet, we approached the flank of Minyakonka, where her father died, and it had been 20 years, and I wasn't sure I could find the grave, but I did. And it had been torn apart, probably by a snow leopard, and his bones were scattered. And his daughter and I gathered his bones, and we rebuilt the grave, and we put fresh prayer flags over it. And the whole adventure with her had taken 2 months. And in that time, I shared with Asia the stories and the lessons from the stories that I knew her father would have shared with her. Some that I've shared with you this morning, how you have to plan, but inevitably things go not according to plan. You have to be flexible and adjust. And you need to know how to go about your life knowing that it's not about the summit, but it's about those footsteps. It's about the how you get there that counts. That in your work life, as well as your home life, your life has to have a purpose. And that purpose has to be more than just about you, but how you can be more than just yourself. I told her about my challenge of whether to return to my life living in the wild parts of the world, and the challenge that I came to realize is a process that never ends, a challenge that everyone here this morning needs to consider, that all of you, wherever you are on your own life's journey, you have to pause and ask, what am I doing with my one wild and precious life?
Thank you, Rick. That was beautiful and just the inspiration that we need. What will each of us do with our one wildlife? We've talked about it all morning. It's people and it's planet, and it's the individual steps that each of us can take. We've had so many great examples from our merchants and our operators today about what are those steps that we can each take. And yeah, we're trying to climb the summit, but we only get there one step at a time. It's tenacity, it's courage, and it's the creative problem solving that we bring to everything else in our business to serve our customer and fulfill our purpose at Walmart. So thanks to everybody here for all that you do. Thank you, Rick, for being our special guest and such an inspirational moment. And wish everyone a beautiful day and a beautiful week. And our hearts and prayers and efforts are with our friends in the Southeast and what we can do to help recover from this disaster and really fulfill our purpose in a very important way in the days and weeks to come. So thank you, Cedric, and everybody for all you're doing for that. Thank you.